Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another political episode. So it was like a matter of time before the Kamala Harris surge is actually dying down, and really, it's the honeymoon is fizzling out. And part of the reason is we've seen Kamala Harris, and part of the reason could be her radical far left economic policy that even Democrats are even criticizing. A lot of people thought, you know what? Kamala Harris was a California Democrat. She kind of had to be a California Democrat, had to be very progressive to get elected in California. You know how that goes. But a lot of Americans were like, oof, this is actually who she is. I mean, duh, this is what she was during the primary. But not all Americans were tuned into the primary. In fact, I wasn't tuned in the primary because I'm not a Democrat, obviously. So I'm not going to be tuned in on the Democrat primaries. And plus, I'm not involved as much as I am now in politics back then. I would say I was more involved in the history stuff. More history, geography. I could care less about politics. But after the 2020 presidential election, I'm like, ouch, that hurt. That hurt because I lost a really, really good president and I got this joke in office. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make sure we get the White House back. And I wasn't a big Trump fan. I mean, I love Trump, but I wasn't diehard for Trump. I wasn't going to jump off a cliff for him. So I'm like, okay, we could have Ron DeSantis. We got let's see, Glenn Youngkin. Wanted Glenn Youngkin for a while. I wanted Tim Scott. But really, I've grown to know that, you know what, the Republican Party is the party of Trump. And the Democrats admit it, and they think it's a bad thing. And it's actually a good thing. You know what? This is the thing. Trump is the next leader of the GOP. The GOP has period leaders and sort of eras. It started with Lincoln, and then it went to Roosevelt. It went from Roosevelt all the way. I would say a mixture of war. Yeah, it would be a little status quo through the 30s and 40s until we get to Eisenhower. Okay, we got Eisenhower, we got Nixon, we got Ronald Reagan, and then we got Donald Trump. Okay, these are the leaders of the GOP. And that's the GOP. I mean, that's how the GOP works. Democratic Party sort of works the same. They're historical leader, but they don't zoom as hard to the leader. Like, I mean, you could go as far as saying the Democrat Party is the party of Barack Obama, but Barack Obama left. Okay, Barack Obama left. He didn't leave a sphere of influence. Okay, he does have influence in his party, but they're not called Obama Democrats, right? He didn't create an ideology like Ronald Reagan did, or Richard Nixon even created an ideology, and Richard Nixon was known more for being a moderate liberal, the more moderate Rockefeller Republican, right? Rockefeller Republican, that's what they're called. But really, those said ideologies usually take over the GOP over time. And you know what? The MAGA, as they like to say, has taken over the GOP. And it's such a bad thing, right? No, well, this is normal. This is how politics in the GOP has been since Abraham Lincoln, guys. Come on. This is literally Trump's the leader of the party. And guess what? Eventually, like it always does, he will fade away. Um, and there will be a new ideology. As much as we hate to admit it, I love MAGA. I love Trump and Trumpism. I'm and Trumpists in general. I like that, and I think it's good. As much as it's demonized, they think it's radical, and it's not. It really isn't. If you think Trumpism is radical, then you think patriotism is radical because that's what it is. Patriotism. I get a lot of Trump Republicans express are not they do some I wouldn't say a lot, but there are some Trump Republicans that can act violent. But that doesn't mean all Trump Republicans are violent. A lot of Democrats take one Trump Republican they met, and they extinguish it to everyone, every Republican. And that's simply not true. If you study different leaders that endorse Trump, you would see they are very kind people. And just looking in general, this is not really what I meant to get into, because Donald Trump's betting odds are rising, and I'm going to tell you why. Like I told you, in Polymarket, his betting odds are rising. He's now 7 points ahead of Kamala Harris, 7 points ahead, and likely going to win the election. I'm going to say, in my betting odds, he is probably going to 60% win the election. Why am I saying 60%? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because never before in American history have we let the corrupt president get away with the corruption he has caused in office. Never before. Now, I'm Donald Trump. I'm not going to use him. I'm not saying he's corrupt. Okay, but he was unpopular, and he's been blamed for multiple issues. The American people held him accountable in 2020. Okay, and he was kicked out. Every president who was unpopular was sort of kicked out, except for Bush, because Bush was unpopular during his second term. He was okay during his first term. Okay, but then you got Jimmy Carter. He got booted out because of the energy crisis, as well as the OPEC, and with the gas prices and all that stuff, the Iran stuff and all that stuff. He was the first Joe Biden. He was kicked out. Okay, then you got Lyndon B. Johnson couldn't even get nominated by the Democrat Party because it was so unpopular. He got pretty much ousted. He's like, I'm not even gonna run. I'm so bad. I can't even run. Gerald Ford, I'm bouncing back and forth, if you will. He's okay. He wasn't so unpopular, but because he pardoned Nixon, his approval rating went down from 80% down to like 20s. I don't like, seriously. Yeah, and he was kicked out too. He was kind of a rhino too. So, there are so many different politicians that were held accountable. Kamala Harris would be the very first, if elected, president to escape the backlash due to her administration. I use her administration because it's the Biden-Harris administration, the word that they don't want to use anymore, Biden-Harris, because they don't want to associate Kamala Harris to this administration. Well, apparently the Harris-Walz campaign will not say anything about trying to be related to the Biden-Harris administration. But the campaign, the Harris-Walz, is so eager to become like the Biden-Harris administration that they want to be a much radical left-wing administration proposing Soviet-like era economic policies. Now, no one saw this coming. CNN has gone scrutiny on Kamala Harris and her campaign strategy. A lot of analysts were saying, okay, she's most likely going to be more neutral when it comes to the economy. Nope! Because this is what she is. She's a far left radical, and if she becomes president of the United States, she would be the most far left president. We have a lot of left wing presidents, guys. The very first left wing, I would consider Thomas Jefferson at the time, for a time, was the most left. Well, first was Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, back then, left wing was a different definition of left wing back then. Thomas Jefferson would never agree with the ideology of Kamala Harris. He is a libertarian, but people back in the 19th century, he was an atheist. That didn't make him far left. It was just him in general pushing states' rights. That's the libertarian side of him. But he also ideologically sided with the French Revolution. He praised the French revolutionaries, and a lot of people called him out on that. That was so-called radical. I wouldn't call Thomas Jefferson a radical at all. Andrew Jackson, on the other hand, was very far left. And at a time, for a bit, he was labeled far left. But and even today, I would consider the most left-wing president to be Barack Obama. I mean, Barack Obama, his tenure was full of progressive, um, just progressivism in general. A lot of people say, "Oh, Roosevelt, FDR, he's left wing for sure." Yeah, he is definitely left wing. A lot of people say, "No, he's right wing because he put Japanese in internment camps." Yeah, well, guess what? I'm just telling you, just because you're left wing doesn't mean you're not bigoted. Okay, I'm not gonna say FDR is a racist. I don't know what is. I can't openly call him a racist. Okay, a lot of people will criticize me for that, but you know what? I would take FDR. Put in a difficult situation, was acting through his gut. But was the internment camp thing bad? Absolutely. So I'm getting off track. I'm saying, you know what? The point I'm making is this is why I think Trump's going to win. Factor A, you know what? If Kamala wins, it shows how screwed up America is. It really does. Not only are you electing a communist, okay? I use the word communist because Kamala Harris's father was a communist. He was, I don't know, an author. He was an activist, a communist activist. He openly called himself a communist. Look it up. He was a communist. Okay? Oh, at least his mother's not a communist. Well, I can guarantee you, her mother applauded her father's communism. Why wouldn't she? That's the question. So not only would we would be electing a communist, but we would be basically pretending that the whole entire corruption that the Biden administration has done for 4 years didn't exist. That didn't happen. That, like, did we let Jimmy Carter get away with his mistakes? Nope. Did we let Donald Trump get away with his mistakes? No. Did we let LBJ get away with his mistakes? Nope. Never have we ever let a president, a historically bad president, get away with his mistakes. Never. Harry Truman wanted to run for re-election but he couldn't because he was too unpopular. He started 2 wars. We just got him. Not only was he facing scrutiny for dropping the atomic bomb on Japan, even though that the Allied powers had the advantage, they had enough of momentum to invade Japan. They just wanted to be done. They just dropped a giant bomb. A lot of people say, "Oh, that was the only way to end the war." I disagree. I respectfully disagree. I mean, I think we should have conservatively really, like, we got the allies on our side. Europe's gone. Let's give another year in the Pacific theater and then come to conclusions. Because seriously, just less than a year, we dropped the bomb. So, that's my point. We never ever let a president get away with his mistakes. And I get Kamala Harris is a president, but we got to remember Joe Biden's not on the ticket, but he is. Joe Biden's supposed to be the nominee, and he still is. People don't realize that. Kamala Harris is controlling the country right now. She's the one moving Joe Biden's strings. So it isn't Joe Biden's fault for all the disaster that's going on. It's Kamala's. In fact, I think they share both the blame. They share the same fate. And guess what? A lot of Americans know that Kamala was moving Joe Biden's strings. If you saw Joe Biden on that debate stage, you would be like, yeah, there's no way Joe Biden is functioning by himself. There's someone moving his strings. And now it seems that we totally forgot about that. That Joe Biden is a talking individual, and Kamala Harris had certainly nothing to do about it. And it's kind of strange that Kamala Harris wants to continue the policies that the Biden administration did for 4 years, but take it to another level. Very weird, isn't it? So realistically, I'm hoping that we get gains in polls, and I get it. It's been, I don't know, couple days, and we got a Rasmussen poll from the 11th. We're going through 53 to 47. Yeah, you know what? Here's the deal. It very well will continue to be Kamala, but I don't think we should listen to the polls. Yes, we're going to continue to update ourselves with the polls because we gotta come into this election with an open mind. The polls could very well be correct, but seriously, Ronald Reagan and Republicans weren't panicking when Walter Mondale walked into the election day in the lead in the polls. They weren't panicking. Actually, they were pretty confident. And they won in a landslide. Same deal with Bush in 88. Dukakis was going to win 15 landslide over George Bush, and for no reason. Reagan administration was pretty good, although they were very conservative. They did some stuff with the Grenada and the Iran-Contra affair, but a lot of people were positive. And here we have Dukakis gaining 15 points. Then again, America was less partisan, but then again, George Dukakis, who heard of this guy? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff back in 88 that didn't make sense. Polls didn't make sense. This doesn't make sense, okay? And a lot of people don't consider that, okay, for a long time, you had a race was originally going to be Trump versus Biden. And then one day, Biden withdraws. The polls, you don't expect the polls to be screwed up. You're actually expecting the polls to be somewhat continue to be accurate. No, I believe the polls, because guess what? Polls are inaccurate in general. Imagine if you further complicate it more by switching out candidates. It's not just confusing voters can understand what's going on, but you're tossing them up again because do I believe in this guy or do I believe in this guy? It's just silly. And now we have RFK withdrawing from the race, and he will be tomorrow. I can guarantee you. All those RFK voters that allegedly went to Trump's probably going to come back home. And we could see more gains for Trump. And even if we don't, I can tell you we shouldn't panic at all. Why should we panic? Because this has happened every single election year. Every single election year. This is no different, guys. No different. This is like the 11th election that Republicans are behind and going into the election as the underdog. This isn't anything new. So why do we have, and Democrats, they're going to continue to say Kamala Harris is going to win. We know they're cheerleading. We know they're on a side. Let them think that. Let them think that. We know who's going to win. I can tell you, 60% chance Donald Trump's going to win because, you know what? Not only did Kamala Harris just all over. She's in a bad, tough situation with the current tenure of the current administration. It doesn't help that the Democrats switched candidates because you are openly admitting that you did a bad job. They will never say that. But we know, we have brains. They think we're dumb. They think we are dumb. But Americans generally know, hey, there's a reason why Joe Biden's getting out. They'll say, oh, it's because of his age. Well, guess what? You should have considered that before. But it didn't have to be about his age. Donald Trump's 78 and he's running over his accomplishments. And that's the thing. Biden didn't have any accomplishments to talk about other than abortion, which he failed on because he promised to codify Roe v. Wade into law. And did he do that? No. And because he didn't do that, guess what happened? I mean, you want to cry abortion. This is something Donald Trump needs to talk about. Guess what? You didn't do you broke your promise on codifying Roe v. Wade. Democrats should be blasting Kamala Harris for that. But they're not because they don't want to. Because in reality, they don't care about abortion. They care about winning. They never cared about abortion. Abortion is a talking point. Abortion is a talking point to get Democrats excited. Okay? If they really cared about it, they'd be blasting Kamala Harris for breaking her lie, for breaking her promise. Kamala Harris promised with Biden that Roe v. Wade would be codified into law. That didn't happen. But they're not going to talk they're not going to talk about it. They're not. Because that makes them look bad. So what do you guys think in regards to the current polling situation with Kamala Harris? Of course, I'm saying you shouldn't worry about it. So what do you guys think? Donald Trump taking back his momentum, RFK, going to add a lot to that. Even not guaranteeing that Trump will get a bump, but who knows? But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you all in the next political episode.